Hello and welcome to today's episode of Rich and Simple Human. As always, I'm here with something very exciting to talk about. We're going to dive into the world of AI. But more excitingly, I have got one of the best guests you could possibly listen to today joining me. Shaun Phillips is joining me on the show, and you're going to really enjoy what he has to say because he's spent over 30 years working in technology. And in that time, he's arrived at a conclusion that might surprise all of you. The most important thing in any business transformation or leadership conversation has absolutely nothing to do with technology at all. Shaun is a professional coach and technology consultant. He works with leaders to close the gap between what AI promises and what it actually delivers. And you're going to find out a bit more about what we mean by that. He's seen firsthand why so many businesses invest in AI and wonder why absolutely nothing changes apart from people become a little bit more afraid. He's built a practical method to fix it that starts with people and not platforms. Shaun, you also coach chief execs. You're a mentor to the next generation of entrepreneurs, so we can talk about the rising gen and next gen conversations. And you bring a very deeply human perspective to one of the biggest shifts our working world has ever known. Shaun, welcome to today's show. I'm incredibly grateful to have you here. Is there anything you'd like to add to that very long, complicated introduction?
Well, I think that's an amazing introduction. So I kind of feel like actually that covers it all.
Of course, it doesn't cover who you are at all, because I know that you are so much more, as am I. And we're both created by a creator to have these creative conversations. And that's exactly what we're going to do today together. We're also going live on LinkedIn. So you're going to see this both as a podcast and as a LinkedIn live. So if you are watching, please enjoy Shaun's and my very smiley and welcoming faces because we're going to have a really good chat. We've had a number of conversations already and we've got lots and lots to cover. Shaun, you work in a super interesting environment. Things are changing very rapidly. And you and I have talked a lot about the fear that this creates in organizations, the way leadership needs to respond and step up, but also how we really need to dig more into being human, the essence of who we are. I always say to my clients, we are in possession of the most sophisticated piece of spiritual machinery on the planet. That's us, and it has nothing to do with AI. So I'm going to start by asking you my very first question. You've spent a long time in this field. This is not your first rodeo, but your message is essentially more human and not less. Why is that so important in the work that you do?
Well, I think it certainly, as you say, it comes from the experience. I mean, this isn't sort of something you wake up and you go, oh, okay, we really need to include the people in any change that we make, particularly technology. And I've certainly learned, back in my younger days, I'd give all the jargon. I would tell everybody, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And they'd have no clue what I was talking about. I probably actually made them more fearful of what was coming because they didn't really understand half of the words that I said. And so over time, I had to go through that journey of going, well, I'm understanding, well, I think there's like 3 key elements we want to think about in any change, particularly technology. Is that why should people use it? What is it going to do for them? And how's it going to benefit the job? And actually also, fourthly, why should they care about using it?
Yeah, that's a great answer. And I think that your business, the name speaks for itself, Tech That Cares. And that is so, so important. What does it mean if technology actually cares?
So, yeah, interestingly, I mean, the name Tech That Cares came about because of this combining this element of, okay, there's this desire, one of my values is loving people. So how does that come together with doing the technology? And I think really there's a couple of elements really when it comes to it. One is that actually, as I already sort of alluded to, there is this element of helping people to understand what the technology is going to do for them. So it's already starting with the people first. It's saying, okay, what is the need for this technology? What is the need? How is it going to support the people, the staff? How is it going to support the organization? As opposed to starting off with, oh, there's a really shiny bit of tech we could use, or, from a leadership level, we go, that's really exciting. We could use this technology, but not really having a full understanding of the need. Because often what can happen is, particularly this can happen in larger organizations, that an idea can come from a higher leadership level, and it could be a good idea, but not understanding what does that impact on the people on the ground, the person that's actually going to do this job. Because by the time it's gone down 4 or 5 layers, it might well be that somebody sits there and go, okay, we've had this message that's come down, and as you get with Chinese whispers, the message kind of gets kind of impacted by each person that shares it. And in the end, somebody goes, well, I don't really know what I'm supposed to do with this. How is it supposed to work? Or how is it aligned with the company values? Because that's another thing as well that is really, I think is really important, is a company understanding when they make decisions that anybody in that organization can take it back to, well, this is where the organization's going. This is their value, their mission, their purpose. And so checking that decisions we're making are aligned with that. And I think that's really one of the things about, again, it comes to the people first. Let's understand the need. Let's actually build a solution around that provides that need. And then we look at it and we say, well, what's the technology we need to support that, rather than the technology being the first thing that we deliver. And I think in the AI era, that's actually becoming even more magnified as a need, because we're being sold the AI can do everything. You need AI to do everything. You need AI. If you don't use AI now, it's going to take your job. Or if you don't use AI now, you're going to get left behind in your business. But we're not really talking about addressing the need in the first place.
No, you've said so much in there. My job now in the next 40 minutes is to try and unpack that so it's digestible, because this is so crucial. I see it happening all the time because I work at this sort of chief exec and leadership level, where somebody says, we must use AI. Here's a great tool. It can do everything. Do it. And of course, as you say, it filters down through the organization and through the business, or the investor, or the shareholders are saying, let's move in this direction. But it's not aligned with the values. It's not aligned with the people already in the business. So we've got this sort of strange layering effect that happens. And when it gets down to the deployment level, why are we actually doing this? And we've actually lost the thread. And of course, we're in a marketplace where there's a lot of noise at the moment. We've got more information than we've ever had, more data than we've ever had. That filtering, the leader says this, let's do it. Does he? Why? Where does it fit? What was the point? What's it trying to do? I do see that happening already, Shaun, at a massive scale, because when somebody with the decision-making power says go, obviously the way that leadership works is that the people that aren't leading respond and say yes.
Yeah. Well, there's a hidden danger as well.
Mm.
And I think this is something that I'm really keen to address. And this is, we talked a little bit about earlier, but about the fear factor. And the thing is that we can often, sometimes I think we can look at fear as something that already exists in someone. So, okay, that person's maybe a bit anxious, or maybe they're a bit sensitive, but there's a reality that, just as we talked about, if we have decisions that are made without having the people involved and them understanding from day one, as soon as somebody walks into an organization or hears rumors, we're talking about using AI, then that can start to elicit fear in those people, because there's unanswered questions. Is it going to affect my job? Or is it going to change my role? I truly believe that roles might change, but it doesn't mean people have to lose their jobs. We can look at, how does AI help them to create a new role? There's going to be new roles, the new jobs, new job specifications we don't even know yet, and they're already starting to. Some are starting to already appear, and some have already appeared, in terms of the using AI in a way like content engineers, people that actually communication engineers that are developing the prompts and developing AI with the machine learning side of things. But coming back to this point of the fear, is that if we address it from the start, if we say, right, if rather than they're allowing the rumors to happen, actually organizations say, right, okay, this is what we're looking at. We're going to be talking to everybody in the teams and individual to help you understand what may or may not change in your role, and I can be working with you as to how we can look to develop that role. Now, it doesn't mean that that you're not going to lose people. You could lose people. You could find that actually there isn't a place for them. But the last thing you want as an organization is to lose someone just because they're fearful of their job, even if there's no actual impact going to happen to their job, but they don't know that. So the fear that develops in them, the stress, they go on long-term stress leave, and eventually they leave the organization, and then you have to pay to replace them. There's a cost in that, but not just that, but you've lost somebody that was potentially really valuable to the organization.
Yeah, that's so crucial. And I think when I come to sort of the titles of this show, Shaun, that fear piece must be addressed quite quickly, because what we're already seeing is people in the workplace who are suffering from anxiety and fear. Their performance goes on the slide. It does a massive downturn before anything even happens. Just the fear response in our body affects performance physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and relationally. So in a business, any business, in fact, any environment at the moment, we're talking about AI, where there is fear, which isn't counteracted with the potential, which you've just explained, we've got this chasm opening up where anxiety is increasing, performance is declining before anything even happens. If we can get ahead of that as an organization from a strategic perspective, then we are already priming ourselves well for the change. And this is, of course, the work that you do in organizations, talking about what might happen, where are the benefits, where might the change be happening, and allowing people to understand and feel safe in that context. So if you haven't already got somebody speaking in your organization, can I suggest that you get Shaun in to have those conversations? Because it's so crucial. We're jumping about a little bit, Shaun, because I really want to come back to the values piece. But before we do that, can we just talk a bit more about fear and the conversation you and I had earlier on about fear and speaking it out, and why this is such an important human process?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think probably similar, I'm sure you've had the similar experiences as well, but often when we have that inner dialogue, so when we have a fear or something, then we have a great ability. And so I wouldn't really call it a gift, but we have ability as humans to make it worse and worse and worse. We can be feeding it in, and we have these voices in our head that end up building up into something that we're really, really kind of fearful of. I mean, I've got better over the years, but I had to work at the dentist. It's a common thing, isn't it? I think it's one of the top things that people have fear of a dentist. But when I actually talk it through with somebody, the reality is that actually it's this, that when it comes out of your mouth, you go, well, it's not really rational. What is fearful about the particular thing? When we speak it out, often we don't. It doesn't make sense. And this, when we share it with someone as well, then I think that means we are more likely to think about: is it logical? Does it make sense? Is it real? There's something that I came across a while ago. I was having some. Was using an app, the CBT app, and it was talks about, this is particularly about anxiety and worry, but one of the things was there are two elements. There's this practical concern, and then there's the hypothetical, and there's this thing. So actually, is this a practical thing I'll do something about? Okay, I'm concerned about not getting enough exercise. Well, okay, practically, I can go for some walks. But if I'm concerned about the behavior of somebody else, or let's take an example of what's going on in my workplace, and there's nothing, something I have control over, that's hypothetical. And when we speak out this fear, we can actually really understand: is it a practical steps we can take, or is it actually a hypothetical thing that actually we don't have any substance to? Therefore, we actually really need to let it go, because it could or couldn't happen. We don't know. Actually, I think it was, I can't remember the thing, that might come back to me later, but it was that like death was, fear of dying was like third or something on this list, that the public speaking, I think, was number one on the list of things, or number one or two on the list of things that people were afraid of. And when you think about that as, well, it's a bit of a hypothetical thing, because whether you do it or not, you've actually got to practically take the step before you find out whether or not it's a concern or not.
It's interesting, isn't it? It's the fear of the unknown. I am afraid of dying, but I have no way of knowing what is actually going to happen when I die. So I'm totally afraid of the unknown. And we've got the same, I think, with AI. I am really worried about AI. I'm really afraid of what it's going to do. What might it do to me? I don't know. When we start to unpack that, okay, so I think my job might disappear. Okay, well, here are some alternatives. I think it might mean that there's no future for my children. It might impact my finances. When we begin to unpack it, we can, as you say, begin to see, well, is this real or not? Is there something I can do, the CBT process you've just described? Can I take action here? Or is it simply just opening up the dialogue, And there's a brilliant research paper out there. This is really, really old, but it involves a fear of spiders. People with arachnophobia, and they give people spiders, and they say they've got them wired up for heart rate variability, galvanic skin response, etc., and stress. And they give some people some spiders, and they say don't say anything. And they give the other set of people with a fear of spiders, but then say that you can speak it out. And what happens in this process is the people who are allowed to speak it out, the spider, I'm going to die. Of course, their body listens to what they're saying. So you're not going to die, are you? It's a spider. So there's this mind-body connection at play here, where if we speak it out, our body suddenly listens to our words and says, oh, that's not rational. So this morning, I've been cold water swimming this morning. The water was quite cold. My whole body's saying, don't get in, don't get in. And my brain's saying, you know, you've done it before and you're not going to die. There's this interplay of mind and body. And of course, we've got mind, body and spirit, where they're having a discussion, and it's a rational conversation between all three. But if we just allow the mind to tell us AI is going to ruin your life, AI is going to have all these detrimental effects, of course, it's not true.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's also, so there's the inner dialogue, and there's also the information that we get from the outside. And I think that's something else that we need to be conscious of, is what information are we taking in? And we have a choice as to what we do with that information. So as we talked about, we can communicate with other people. We can go and find out, is that information true or not? And I think that's really key in terms of with AI, because there is so much things out there, headlines, summaries. I mean, particularly I've seen this a lot in media, that you can see there's the shock headline, but when you read in between it, it's not actually as bad as it sounds. You know, there's a concerns, but actually it's often made worse. So this communication piece, finding out what it is, finding out the truth of what it is. So if you're hearing rumors in work that your organization that people are going to be using AI, will actually go, okay, well, let's go and find that. Or if you're hearing, as a leader, you're hearing rumors of people using AI and you don't have a policy around managing that, then that's something that needs to address. But it's this communication piece. It's this clarity that you're bringing to people to understand, well, what is it going to mean to use AI in the organization? How do I use it in a way that is safe? Because again, it's this principle, we're talking about using tools, and because they're coming so fast, we're seeing the tools changing without there even being any notification there's been an update, because they're just changing all the time. And I think, imagine you give somebody a drill for the first time and you just go, here you go, here's a drill, have a play. You wouldn't really do that. But that's what we're seeing with AI, is we're seeing that there's organizations that are just, allowing people to have a go, which is fine if it's in a controlled environment. You don't want that to be doing in customer data or personal data, because this is another concern. This is another thing that brings in some of the fear for people, is what happens with their information, even in an organization. Okay, well, if you're using AI in the HR thing, and I've got maybe some medical information potentially in there, because there's some information in there that I don't want to be shared or trained with AI. And so if we're not communicating as organizations, how we're using AI, what AI tools are we using, how is the data secured, then it's another thing. There's a lot of these elements that fear can be brought in if we don't communicate properly.
Yeah, this is a really interesting point. And I think because we've got a very interesting group of listeners, if you are a chief exec or a founder listening to this show and you don't have an AI policy in place, I think Shaun and I would like to reassure you that a policy that keeps changing is also okay, but at least you have a policy. And having a policy that then is understood is more important than having a policy that nobody has read, because it's totally ineffective. But people are using these tools in their businesses, in your business, and people are using it with data that is potentially sensitive. You do need a policy quite quickly, and you do need a policy with the understanding that there is a huge amount of flexibility, because this is always changing. So please, please, please go into the marketplace, find yourself some expertise, and make sure you have a policy that you also communicate, but that offers clarity and security to your employees. Because we are in the unknown, Shaun, and just this morning, there's a huge article in the New York Times about AI and legislation, and how governmental policy will now be a huge vote winner, because this is so crucial to moving forwards.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. And I love what you said in there about the policy and the flexibility, because this is the point, is you're not looking to get it right from day one necessarily, because we're seeing the speed of change is unprecedented, and in terms of the changing with going technology. But I read something recently, and this was, I think, is really important, that policy was introduced into organization, and then people were then left thinking, okay, well, I've breached the policy before the policy come, so what do I do? Do I now go and have to go and do I go and sort of say, oh, look, I've been doing this. And I think that's an important aspect. Really, I think you want to know about these things, but you need to almost have like a bit of an amnesty to say, look, we're not going to, we realize we've just brought this policy in. We haven't given you any guidance. We're now giving you guidance. And so from this point, we need you to follow this guidance. If you're concerned about any potential data concerns previously, then there being a way that is, non-judgmental, a way that people can actually say, yeah, okay, I'm a bit concerned that maybe this happens, so that there is transparency. Right? This is, I think, a great word to use when we talk about AI. Is we want to be transparent about our use of it, whether it's we're using AI or not using AI, whether we produce something with AI or not. And what does that mean for people's, as we talked about earlier, people's jobs? The transparency piece, the communication piece is so key.
Yeah, it is. And actually, what an amazing way you've just articulated that, Shaun, because I don't think businesses are doing that. Having some sort of space where they say, okay, we're going to have an amnesty type approach. We do want to develop a policy and we need to do that quite quickly. But before we do that, or here is the straw man of a policy, we do need a bit of an amnesty to know what we've already done. And this is within the container of trust, communication and transparency. Because if you don't do that piece, you have got the situation, and every single person listening to this will know that they've also done it. They've used AI that they've privately paid for, possibly, or it's on their phone or wherever. They've used data from somewhere else. AI has now got that data, and they have used AI in it that potentially is an infringement of a policy that could come. Well, why don't we have those conversations up front in a space that is secure, transparent, and honest, and just work out, okay, what have we done, but in a safe space? I don't see anybody doing that, Shaun. Do you?
No, not really. And there's the problem is there's very simple things, like there's like one setting on all of the language models, pretty much, that you can set that will mean that it won't theoretically it shouldn't be training on the data you're providing. But again, that comes to, like you said, it's the flexibility, saying, right, maybe policy one is just one point that says, okay, if you're using AI in the organization, then you need to let us know what you're using, and to confirm that you've actually changed this setting to make sure that it's not actually storing memory and removing any memory that maybe it's already previously stored in there that's related to that data. But it really is an organic thing that the organizations, that to not put their head in the ground and, as you said, not deal with the policy, but just get in touch with people that can support you in that process.
Yeah, and you are one of those such people. I just see organizations moving so slowly in their decision making. And I know that there'll be chief executives listening to this now thinking, oh my gosh, here's another thing I've got to do. How am I going to get this through? Please act quickly. Please get some kind of policy in place, and please do it in the context of reducing fear, increasing trust, and opening communication. Because if you don't, and you just come in with this strong arm policy, people are already using it in a way they probably shouldn't have used it, not knowing. You do need to have some comms work behind that. This is a fascinating conversation, Shaun, isn't it? How many organisations in the UK do you think have done anything about this so far?
I don't really have any stats on it, but I don't think it's very many. And I think in those that have probably got AI to write the policy, or have grabbed a policy off the shelf. And I think that's kind of like worse. I wouldn't say it's worse than not having a policy, but as we just talked about, you don't want to put people into a position of they have been doing something, with sort of good meaning and in their roles, and then feel like they're on the wrong side of a policy, But it comes to communication. I think you said it. It's the very first point. You really, as an organization, I would say the best advice I can give, even if you don't get anybody in the first place, the best advice I can give is get your teams together, talk about, have this sort of, kind of almost empty your pockets kind of approach of saying, okay, what have you been doing using AI for? What have you been using it for? And understand where you're at. Because then you can look at look at that and say, okay, well, what are the bits that we don't want that to be happening? Okay, well, let's do that. Then you can, even if you form your policy just to start off with, in making sure that you're covering what's currently happening and what shouldn't be currently happening, then it's really simple. Then you've got to start. You can always then develop that policy, as we talked, as you mentioned as well, as government policy will it ultimately affect that as well. But it doesn't. We don't have to overcomplicate it. It really comes down to bringing your teams on. I mean, I think in any transformational project that you should, from day one, at the point in which you're thinking about doing it, you should be bringing somebody on board who's actually going to be the end user of this, the person that's going to have to be delivering that. Those people should be involved in that conversation, not from the point in which you've made the decision, ordered the paid for the consultancy, but actually from the point in which you're saying, okay, let's make sure that we're addressing the concerns, the fears of the people that actually are going to be delivering that.
Yeah, I love the way that you've said that. And I think you and I move very quickly in the work that we do. And we're also very flight of foot, if you like. There are so many consultancies out there who are now offering solutions, supposedly, but they're slow, they're expensive, they're clunky. There is a short, quick piece of work to do here, like you've just explained. People in a room, in a safe space saying, okay, what have we been doing so far? What do we think might be happening? And then what might a policy look like? That's quite a short, concise piece of work to be done, if it's facilitated properly by experts like yourself, to get going on this. But organisations, especially, I think post-COVID is a great excuse, isn't it? Oh, we're just not making decisions quickly enough. Oh, we need to get approval for that. Oh, it's not coming in the right place. Whilst you've got somebody in a senior leadership position saying, use AI, just go for it. And the organisation's doing all sorts of crazy things without any guardrails.
Yeah, and that's one of the factors in terms of in terms of the excitement. I mean, I've worked in, as you said, over 30 years in technology. Because I get excited about technology, I didn't make a decision to have a career in technology. It's just I've always enjoyed it. I had my first computer probably when I was 9, I think. So in terms of that, it's an exciting time, and but we also have equally a concerning time, because what does the future hold? And actually we can determine the shape of that. And I think that's really underlying what we're talking about at this point, is we can shape it. AI is not something that, we're not talking about Terminator 2. We have the ability to shape how we use AI, what we use it for, that actually we use it to extend what people can do, that we can actually raise our level of delivery and innovation for using AI as something that supports the work we do, that helps us be more creative, be more inspired, to learn more, to grow our skills and intelligence more, rather than actually it be something that replaces those things.
Absolutely. And the bit I get excited about, because I'm a behaviour change specialist, is when we call out our own creativity, like our deep gifts and talents, and we think, okay, how might I use that in the context of AI to be even more of who I am? That's exciting. I'm not replacing myself. I'm just saying, actually, I'm really good at, I'm trying to think of an example, super good at encouraging people. I'm going to use AI in my business to really drill down into people's uniqueness and help them accelerate their effectiveness in the workplace. I'm talking about my own experience. If we can do that with employees, and we can really help them say, okay, so who are you? What do you currently do, and what do you currently like doing? And then, okay, this is how AI might really help you leverage that. It becomes an exciting way of becoming even more creative, even more human, even more effective. That's an exciting conversation to have with people. That's not AI is going to ruin your life. That's, like you say, opening up all these new job opportunities, opening up another side of their creativity they've never explored. I was with a friend yesterday, and she was talking about the bit, she's coming into a new role. And I was saying, what's the bit you most enjoy? And she was talking about M&A, and she was talking about the bit that she loves about the sort of creating and the structuring. And I said, oh, that's your creator, your inner desire being called out. And she said, oh, yeah. And I said, oh, do you feel like you're a creative person? And she said, well, in this context, yes. It was such a great conversation. I was like, this is where people should be getting excited in their roles and responsibilities. I'm not seeing that happening either, are you?
No, you touched on, I mean, you really touched on something that really massively resonates with me and is at the core of what we're talking about, really, is if we just sort of, for a minute, just put AI aside one thing and we look at actually, I talk in the concepts of making sure that we've got the right people on the bus in the right seat. And there's this element that often we can, in organizations, there can be people that are doing a job and they're doing a really good job or something, but they could be doing a great job doing something else. Or in part of it, what are we doing to, as you say, to feed that creativity, to understand, we can look at a CV. I'm not seeing this so many times that somebody can be hired for their CV and they're hired and nobody ever goes back and looks at their CV again and goes and says, oh, we need somebody for something. And they go, oh, but actually this person's got, or girl has got leadership skills, or they've got this skill. We didn't know about that. Oh, they've actually got fundraising. We need to do some fundraising. But often that doesn't happen. We're not having those conversations to say, what is really valuable to you? What do you value? What do you enjoy doing? What lights you up? That's one of my favorite conversations to have with someone in an organization. What lights you up? What about your role lights you up? And what could be added to your role? What else could you be doing in your role that would light you up even more? When we get into those spaces, as you say, we've got people who are excited. We've got people that actually really want to do things. It's something that I think they still do, but something that Google introduced many years ago, which was where you could have a day to just do whatever just invent whatever you wanted, just create whatever you felt like creating, this space to just be. And that's such human. We were born to create. We were born to be co-creators with God, and so we're wired to be creative. And as you were saying, speaking to your friend, I was similar. For years I wasn't really great at drawing, and I thought I didn't feel like I was creative. And then I started to be doing things around building things with technology, websites and things, and I realized I'm creative. And I think people knowing how to understand what part of them is creative, because everybody is creative, but we're doing it in different ways. And I think when we understand that, and so if you figure that out, even before you add on AI, when you do add on AI, as you said, you're like, well, actually, how do we help you be more inspired, be more creative? This creative outlet you have, how do we accelerate that more? I'm doing that at the moment with building applications. I'm using AI to help me build applications for automation. But what I'm really loving is this ability to be able to use my technology creativity. And that's really, really fun for me.
Do you know what? As you're speaking, I'm like, I just want to keep having these conversations more, because the whole reason I do a podcast is because I love talking to people and I love talking. So it ticks all the boxes of my desire. Now, not everybody's built like me. We're all so unique. We're uniquely made with these gifts and talents, this treasure in jars of clay. My job in my work is to go in the jar of clay and look for the gold and be like, oh my gosh, look at all this cool stuff in there. Shaun, you've just said the same. You're out in the marketplace with your business, doing what you love, doing what you were created to do, in a capacity of meeting people's needs as well. People need what you offer. This sounds so simple when we talk about it. And this is, we could have called this podcast actually Burnout, because when you have the right people on the bus in the right seats, you prevent burnout because they're all doing what they were created to do. If you have bought the wrong bus, you have put the wrong people on, and then you put them in the wrong seats, you've got the person who's really good at changing tyres driving the vehicle. This is not going to go well if we use the Formula One analogy, which actually Formula One is always really good at this. We have to have the right people in the right roles in the right place at the right time, primed in the right way, because you cannot have the car pull into the pit stop, AI, And then you've got people who are trying to change the tyres who should have been polishing the flies off the windscreen. Total disaster.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because when we talk about, I think it is a great analogy, F1, because it is high performance. You can't, it's often we look at, we're looking to aim for high performance. But with F1, you're like, well, this has to be high performing. Therefore, then we have to make sure that the elements are correct, rather than what often can happen the other way around is we just grab people to do stuff. Or you can do something, you'll do that. People that are very good at their skills, they've got great skills in a particular area. Let's make you a manager because you're really skilled in the particular discipline that you're doing. But that doesn't necessarily make them a good manager. It doesn't necessarily mean they have those leadership skills. And often then it becomes down to this lack of training. And this is, again, the same issue that when we're seeing it work, it's even worse with AI, because if we think of other technology advancements and things that have come along, organizations have had time to consider, do we want to get on that? Do we want to get on that bandwagon? Do we want to jump on that? Okay, we're going to plan to do that. Maybe we'll do that in a year's time, and we'll sort of put some budget aside to go and put those people on the training and make sure that they know what they need to do that. What we're seeing with the speed of implementation with AI, the speed of technological change, that we're kind of having to rethink a little bit the way that we look at technology in particular, the way that we look about how we go about training people, because we can't train people in the same way and say, we're going to train you on how to use this piece of AI, because this large language model, because it can change in a week or 2 weeks. And so we're having to look at it in more of a, how do we build people's capability in using the technology? In this instance, because we're talking particularly about how do we use that to build the capability in AI, so they fundamentally understand how AI works, fundamentally understand how to make it efficient, how to make it prompt, how to consider sustainability, how to look at building things that can be then reused, but without necessarily having to use AI every time. And what this means is you have people across the organization that can actually, not just in the IT departments, but can actually create applications that can use AI, but you're not stuck in this, we've now got to continue to train people because the particular model that they're using has changed. Or it might mean that actually you need to use something different. And you can do that because fundamentally you understand the principles, because no matter what the software is, no matter how somebody brands their AI software, ultimately it all works in the same way underneath. And the kind of scary thing is, not to add to the fear, but the kind of scary thing is that none of these companies truly understand how AI works and why it works. So we have some principles that we do know, but fundamentally they don't exactly fully understand why it actually works.
No, and I must also point out, because I say this a lot in my own work, if you're over 45, you're losing some of your cognitive flexibility. Dr. Arthur Brooks talks about this all the time. Your ability to stretch and understand and comprehend is unfortunately reducing. It's really hard to learn, for example, to learn a new language as you get older. You do need some help from the younger generation. I don't think we're going to get onto this in today's show, but there is a real time now to be thinking, okay, I can use my wisdom and I can use my intuition, but my mental flexibility is not going to be as quick or as good as some of those younger people in my business. So let's make sure we've got really good representation from a diverse group to begin to understand how this applies and how this works.
Well, 100%, because as you said, with the age bracket, I've been doing it a lot, but the proportion, obviously, of people that have been involved in technology for a majority of their life is in that bracket is relatively small. And we need the digital natives, because we need to understand, because this comes back to that principle of the users. They're going to be the users. They're going to be, when we talk about, we briefly touched on kind of parenting earlier, and this element of they're the people that are going to be the beneficiaries or left with the challenges in terms of the world and the shape of the world in the future, and we're not. And so actually making sure that it comes back to that same principle, the communication, saying we need to be working with young people to understand, well, how do they want to use AI? How do they want to use technology? As well as being able to, as you said, bring in our own wisdom and experience to say, well, actually, we hear a lot from that generation, the older generation, of saying, wow, wasn't it great when we didn't have mobile phones? Wasn't it great when we only had, a few channels on the TV? Wasn't it great when actually a lot of the time we preferred to be outside? If it was an opportunity to be outside playing with friends, that was the thing that we loved to do. And we can recognize how that has equipped us in a certain way that maybe is finding young people are finding challenging. So it's supporting them in being able to find a way to use technology in a way that actually is beneficial to us. And as you said, there's a whole other route we can go down in the concerns of using technology. But obviously, we're focusing particularly on AI. But yeah, having those conversations, as you say, of course, are diverse and not dismissing young people just because they're young. I think it's super important that from a teenage level that we are talking to these young people about what do they envision for the future, how do they do that, and have those across the generations, so we can understand that everyone is factored in and nobody feels a bit like they're not being heard or their generation's being left out of the conversation.
And this is also part of the human fear factor. When we don't feel heard and we don't feel seen, we feel vulnerable. So that evolutionary psychology is triggered. Nobody's seen me, nobody's heard me, the tribe might ignore me, then I'm left in the wilderness and I'm going to die. This creates, and I monitor HRV, I'm massively into my biometric tracking. That fear response in your nervous system will impact your heart rate variability data massively. We have to ensure that everybody in the organisation feels seen and heard, not just because we're going to say, oh, they're snowflakes and we need to, appease them because they're so sensitive. That drives me mad. But because we have a basic human need to feel included. And if we don't, again, our performance just drops. So if you're paying people, why would you not go out there and actually consult with them and include them and leverage their intelligence and information and knowledge that you don't have because basically you're too old? You see, it sounds like a no-brainer when we say it like that, Shaun, doesn't it?
Well, it does, there's some simple things that I've seen in my career, and that's just been things like the CEOs, the directors coming and just walking along, and chatting to people in the office. It's a simple thing, but that, as you say, that being seen and heard and feel like you have a voice, feel like actually if I needed for whatever reason, there was a concern that wasn't being addressed, by the management, I could go and have a conversation with some of the senior leaders. That's as you said, we want to be seen by the people that we deem as being the ones responsible for our job. It's something we can be spending most of our time when if we're doing somebody's doing a 9 to 5 role, you're spending most of your time in the office in that role. It's a huge part of your life. And you want to be able to feel like you're contributing, feel like you're actually doing something meaningful. Everybody feels that way. Even those people, sometimes we might dismiss somebody because they do a repetitive task. But I've known people that love those. They're like, great, just give me more of these things that I can do in a repeatable way, and I can do it well.
And those people they're so valuable in your business, Shaun. And I think we forget this, and we sort of, like you say, the leaders become the leaders, and then they forget what's going on the ground. Or somebody comes to them with an idea and they say, oh, I know more than you, or they're not receptive because they're just so used to being on transmit as the leader all the time. And you need to be able to do both. Shaun, I'm aware that we've managed to get through the entire time I've asked you none of the questions I've prepared, which now means we've got 3 other podcasts to do, which I'm super excited about. We've unpacked so much already in this conversation. We haven't talked about the values discovery tool that you offer. I think we're going to have to put that into another show somewhere. We haven't talked in much detail about next gen. We haven't talked about the importance, although we've touched on this communication piece, before we even get into the AI conversation. There's so much here I'm not seeing this being presented in the marketplace in the way that we've tackled this today at all.
Yeah, I'm starting to see it come. I'm starting to see it come. I'm seeing more organizations, more consultancies talking about taking this human first approach, but it is really, I would say, I would agree. I think it's quite in the early stages. It was something that I've been sort of talking about for over a year now. I'm starting to see other people that I'm meeting going, talking about the similar principles, seeing organizations talking about AI capability rather than how you 10x your business by using AI. There are plenty of short-term ways that you can try to elevate your business. There's obviously organizations that are AI first. Now, I think AI first is fine if you're building a business from initially AI first. But one of the things that I would really just want to make sure that I cover in this is, for those leaders that are listening, is there's a danger that if you go approach AI in the way that I can save money, and I don't think anyone should be looking at AI in a way of saving money because you're going to use it to replace people. Because ultimately, what we're already seeing this happen already, and is because of the speed of AI, we're seeing this happen already, where organizations have tried to replace people, get rid of these valuable people like we talked about earlier, then realize they need those valuable people, because who's going to actually make sure that AI is going to continue to improve and be predictably do the jobs that these people are doing. Then realize they need those people, but those people have already moved on, and why would they want to come back? Because of the way that they were replaced, and then the actual cost of replacing them. So in the end, that the cost saving wasn't a cost saving; it was actually you've lost money, so you're worse off than you were in the first place. So I would really strongly encourage organizations to look at how you can develop the people you have, the people you've invested in, you spent a lot of money in, both in hiring and training and growing, to see how can you best use them, even if it's in a different role in the organization, or a role that actually is about helping to improve AI. Not everybody's getting the return on their investment for AI because of the people, and not because the people do anything bad. It's just we're not actually engaging the people in the right way, as we've spoken about.
I love that. I can't work out how I'm going to put this into the title, but basically, if you're listening, Shaun has just said, if you try and use AI to save money and replace people, your business will eventually die financially. Now, if you're not listening to that thinking, oh yeah, then please come and have a conversation with one of us, because that is essentially what will happen. And I think we could probably draw a model actually of that, Shaun, as to the risks, like the cognitive behavior therapy tree. You make this decision because you think you're going to save money. Then what happens is this, then what happens with this, then you're trying to replace everybody, and then financially that's it. Disappeared.
Yeah. Well, who's going to, so we're already talking about so we just, see what I've done for another time. But when we look at the next generations, they're already concerned about trying to find a job, because AI is taking, what they're looking at and saying, okay, well, where should I train in that's going to be a bit of a safer space, a space that AI is less likely to take over? My youngest daughter's studying fashion, and she's really pleased that she's doing that, because she feels that that's an area that is kind of a bit more protected, from AI, as it happens at the moment. But if you're a young person and looking at organizations, and you're looking at organizations that are saying that AI first, or organizations that you can see that they've heavily invested in AI and at the cost of their staff, how are you going to get the best talent? And AI is not the best talent. AI is reproducing information that you already have. AI will never be as creative as humans, because it's built on human creativity. So what did I say? I said it's never going to be as creative. It's never going to be as creative as humans, because it's built on human creativity.
The beauty of AI will, of course, pull this out in the transcript, so we can plaster this all over socials. But what you've just said, Shaun, is the moment where we have to realise this is actually going to be okay, because we are in control and we have the power here. And we do need to go in with our eyes open, but we need to go in with our eyes open and communicating about where we're going with this. You will never recruit top talent if you build your business around replacing people with AI. It just will not happen. Let's find a diagram that explains that, the risk, because I think that could be a really fun social post. Shaun, I have literally asked you none of the questions I wrote for this interview at all, which I apologise for, but you have been a very, very gracious host in accommodating my enthusiastic unpacking of all of this. All we've got to say at the end, because I never like to run these conversations too long because people simply turn off because their attention span has been so shortened by their use of AI and socials that they can't listen for much longer. If people want to talk to you, this is going live on LinkedIn. What is the best way to contact you and where can they find out more about you?
I mean, yeah, LinkedIn is predominantly the best place. There's also techthatcares.com, the website, and also going to be having more of these conversations specifically around what it means to be better with humans in the Better with Humans podcast.
Better with Humans. I will also make sure you've got the link to that in the show notes and in the notes for today. Shaun, this conversation has been absolutely incredible. Everybody needs to start wrapping their head around it from this perspective, not from the other perspective. This is not a money-saving device. This is not a tool that we're just going to deploy without care. We really need to take the human-first approach, and that is exactly what you are doing. My job is to help people with behaviour change and spot where we're really driving ourselves into fear and anxiety and not into security, safety and significance. So that's where yours and my work obviously overlaps. I was also asking myself as we were talking about, Lindsey, how are you suddenly talking about AI one day and the great wealth transfer the next? And the overlap here is that we have to go human first. So we're not just making decisions about wealth transfer based on tax, 10xing our returns and governance structures, but we're making it on the fact that we are here for a purpose on Earth, to be purposeful, to create a legacy and to improve things for generations to come. That's the bottom line of the work that I do. That's absolutely the work that you're involved in and why you're in this sector. Shaun, we'll meet again. Another podcast, I mean, we could actually do this weekly because we've got so much to talk about. Let's talk about that when we close the show. But until next time, thank you to everybody for listening. Thank you to all my listeners who send in questions, suggestions, and the fact you want to hear about AI in these contexts of human behaviour change, being a rich and simple human, not just a robotic accompaniment to your AI model that you are using. Anything else to add, Shaun, before we close today?
Well, I just wanted to briefly just respond to what you said about this sort of wealth transfer and AI. And AI gives the ability to do things you couldn't possibly do before. And one of the things that arguments people have is that, well, what is it doing about taking away people's ability to, like, oh, you have a picture done and you're not, you didn't use an artist. Well, one of the things is, would you have paid an artist to do that picture in the first place? And if you wouldn't do anyway, then what AI is doing is giving you the ability to do something to compete with the bigger organizations. So small organizations being able to compete with bigger organizations. And when you're saying about I think there is connections there with the big wealth transfer, because we're actually saying here's an opportunity. If it's done in a human first way, if we're doing it with people, there's an opportunity that organizations can actually grow using AI in a quite in a dramatic and an effective way if it's done in a human first way.
Yeah, thank you for that, because my brain sometimes gets a bit lost. And I think every day when I wake up and try and put God's will before mine, I think, what am I talking about today? How on earth does this link in together? Where is the thread? And it's a bit like a sewing game, isn't it? Change your perspective and everything changes. When you're in it, you can't quite see how this has happened. In fact, I can't even remember how you and I connected originally, but I can now. I'm thinking about it. But we didn't just turn up and, we didn't just meet in the pub last night. This has been an ongoing conversation from different threads. And here we are, and let's see what happens next.
Yeah, thanks so much. I've really enjoyed the conversation. And as you say, it's gone around different places, but I think sometimes the best conversations do, because we're following a thread and we're just unpacking that thread as we go.
And it felt like we were actually in the pub having a pint over that conversation, because it was organic and it went where we wanted it to go. So I hope you've enjoyed today's show. Please get in contact with Shaun and I. Please listen out for the next show, because there will be plenty more on this topic. And until next time, please subscribe to the newsletter on richsimplehuman.com, because you will then receive the notes and the assets from today. And I think there's a diagram coming from Shaun that explains why you must not use AI for cost savings in your business, or it will die. Until next time, take care and stay rich, simple, and human. All done.